The Word produces faith for what it promises. When you hear the words of salvation, it produces faith for salvation. When you hear words of healing, it produces faith for healing. When you hear words of deliverance, it produces faith for deliverance. The Word produces faith for what it promises. Faith resides in your spirit, and your spirit is strengthened by the Word. The Word is the spiritual sustenance for your soul. And when you receive the Word, you begin to think like God thinks. You begin to know what God desires. You begin to see what God likes and dislikes, and becoming familiar with His nature. It helps to manifest the union that you have in the Spirit. By receiving the Word, you grow your spirit. And by growing your spirit, you increase your faith. When you put just the news, when you just put secular podcasts, when you just put television programs into your mind, it does something to you. It affects your soul, most often in a negative way. But when you put the Word of God in your mind, when you receive the Word of God in your heart, faith is produced. If you want to increase your faith, begin to decrease the intake of the secular and increase the intake of the Word.
What is faith and how does it work? Verse 1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith then must have substance. It must have some stuff that you can rely on. Now, what this means is faith is only as meaningful as the substance to which it is attached. If you've got faith in bad substance, then your faith will be insufficient no matter how much of it you possess, because the substance you're placing it in is much. Or maybe not real at all. Faith has to do with an expectation in a hope that must involve a substance. So the amount of your faith is not tied to how much faith you have. It's tied to how much substance you possess.
This is the question that every one of you today are going to have to answer. Who is Jesus? If Jesus claimed to be God knowing He wasn't God, then He's a liar. And we will have to say, Jesus, you're a liar. You're a fraud and a hoax, and you're the biggest fraud in the history of the human race. Or, if Jesus thought He was God and did not know the difference, then He desperately needed mental help. He needed several psychiatrists. The third alternative is that He was who He claims to be, God in the flesh. I believe that the evidence is overwhelming that He is who He claims to be, the Son of the living God. But I cannot prove it scientifically. But I can prove it by the lives that He transforms every day. I can prove it because in my heart, I don't say I think, I hope, I say I know.
People who study genes and genetics, scientists, they have identified a certain gene recently. It's called gene SLG684. And you know what they labeled it? It's called the worry gene. It's a medical fact. I want you to listen to me carefully. And the people who have the short version of the gene SLG684 are prepositioned, they say, and more prone to worry than people who have the long version of this particular gene. And when I read that, I thought to myself, Oh God, do I have the short version or the, just reading that, I just immediately went to worry. And I remembered this text, much ado about nothing. I'm with you. I'll never forsake you. I'll never leave you. I'll never abandon you. I'm telling you today that God does not want us to live in chronic fear. Fear is usually the result of increased vulnerability. And that's what we're feeling in our nation and around the world. We feel vulnerable. We don't have any way to protect ourselves, but we have the protection of Psalms 91. And if you don't even read the Bible, by the way, I was notified today that many of the rabbis and synagogues are reading the protection Psalms out of the book of Psalms over their people, and they're asking them to take those Psalms. They believe that there is supernatural power in Psalms like Psalms 91, that when you speak those words, that He'll give His angels charge over you, that He'll protect you, that He will keep you, and you abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Read Psalms 91. When you're afraid, choose faith over fear. Read the Word of God. If you'll read the Bible will read you. And it'll detect that fear, and then it'll feed your faith.